Hi, everyone. Welcome to another strong, happy, healthy, loved podcast. I'm your host, John, and today I have a very, very special guest called Helen Rowley-Reynolds, who is my mum, but is much, much more than that. So, welcome to today, Helen. I know there's a few things going on and with technology and everything. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, John, and greetings.
But I
I'm,
just
I'm
want to
actually having a lot of fun. Yes.
Good. That's the main thing. So I just want to go through a little list of your accomplishments in no particular order.
Okay.
A single mother raising two children. You were a registered nurse
Yes.
for 35 years. You
Yes.
represented New Zealand in basketball. You were part of the national representative team. You were a tertiary educator. I know you worked at the Polytech there and teaching students. You were a masseuse.
Yes.
You're a personal trainer. You're a support worker and caregiver and counselor with the Citizens Advice Bureau in New Zealand. You're a master
Yes.
numerologist. You're an educator, and you're also very heavily involved in assertiveness training through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So when I list those accomplishments, how does that make you feel?
Sounds pretty good.
Amazing. You have
Yep. Yep.
amazing.
I think I've done well. I've done.
I think so too. So I mean, I've known you my whole life. Um,
Yeah.
but you started way before that. So can you take me back to your childhood and any early thoughts or the type of upbringing you had? Did it prepare you for the life you were going to live or the some of the challenges?
Yeah. Well, it did because I really wanted to be taken care of, which is actually what happened in my past life. So your next life, you come in as you've been, I believe. And for me, it was like I wasn't going to get security for my family. I had to find it within myself. So I always felt like I was different. I had two older brothers. They didn't actually see eye to eye with me. My mother had been a registered nurse also, and she was very much the authoritarian. You'll do as I say, and I did that for a little while and was a good girl. And then I became a bit of a rebel, and I think that saved me.
But sometimes it's certainly not the ideal. You don't sometimes get the best cards, but I guess it's learning to play those cards to your advantages. So you realize that early, or did you just have this strong inner resolve to follow your instincts and your heart?
Well, the strong I identify with because I didn't feel very strong, but I knew that I needed to be strong because I really felt like I was pretty much on my own. My dad I connected with, but he was a little bit aloof and he used to always be in the garden. So I used to join him in the garden and have fun with him in the garden. So that was my one of my saving graces as a child. And reading. I loved reading and I loved being curious and finding answers to things.
Certainly see where the curiosity comes from in my experience.
Mm.
So you got into nursing at an early age. Was that something that was an opportunity given to you, or you were inspired to go into that career path?
I was going to be a nurse from the time I was 5. I used to get under the bed with a little girlfriend, and I'd bandage all her legs up and take care of her. So I did that. It wasn't because my mother was one. I just knew that that really was my purpose, and I loved it. I really loved taking care of people and also asking them questions about why they thought they were sick and why they thought they were where they're at. And that made it more interesting than just giving out drugs and, you know, giving them the care that I knew that they needed.
So obviously within the training, you were given the training to be a nurse, but I know along that way, I mean, you were given opportunities to step up and um, given more responsibility. Did they see something in you that you already had these other gifts that were going to be developed?
I guess so. I just knew what I was doing, and I was doing it to the best of my ability. So obviously some people saw it, and that was great.
You started to notice that you were only given some of the ideals, and you started to question how that modality worked. I mean, around nutrition, around, well-being and taking care of yourself. How did that continue to evolve?
Well, I nursing took, a lot of my life, 35 years, but in the end it was like, I don't want to just give drugs and be tending to people who, in a lot of ways, they didn't know why they were sick. They weren't going to change their lives. It was like, nah, I've got more to give than this. So I floundered for a long time, and I guess I was near my 40s, which, because I went into numerology and a little bit of astrology when in my early 30s, I started asking questions about, what happened at certain ages. And things happen at 30 and 40 and 50 and 56 and then the 80s. So there's a lot of there's a lot of information, but you've got to actually go searching for it.
Well, I know you've certainly been a pioneer in a lot of realms, and I guess you found numerology, which I guess, please explain, what is numerology, and how has that really played a major factor in your life?
Well, I always say it found me because at close to 30, I wasn't very happy. I was in a marriage. Everyone thought I was very happy. I had two wonderful children, a girl and a boy, and I should have been top of the tree. But I was working out that, unfortunately, a lot of people in my life I felt weren't cherishing me, and that was certainly my husband. And so I was searching, so I was reading lots again, and numerology almost fell out of the bookshelf. And so I started researching, and it said my life was going to change at 32, which it did. And it's really just the meaning of numbers. Pythagoras always said there were figures and there were numbers, and the numbers were the meaning of life. And to me, it just gave me answers that I really needed at the time. So I learned it. I started teaching it. I did readings, and it fulfilled a lot of again, the purpose that I was looking forward to be useful.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has given me a good skill set and some tools, and even talk about Tesla with his ideals of the 369 and numbers, and we see with math how important the equations and the figures are. So it's certainly something that, if it's helped you, that's wonderful, and I certainly see that it can be of benefit. So, I mean, I know it wasn't something, it flew in the face, I guess, in some ways, that it wasn't popularized, and I guess you were probably criticized or vilified in some way, that, hey, Helen, what's all this stuff? Why don't you just, keep it to yourself? I mean, was that a challenge to
Oh,
play with?
yes. I mean, I had it from within the family. What's Helen doing now? And I had gotten to the point where my life was important to me, and I needed to live it as I needed to live it. So I took the criticism, but I really didn't wear it at all.
So
And that's where the strength comes in again. It made me strong, that I didn't need to listen to what people's opinion of me was and is. It's what I think of myself that's most important.
and raising a family, I mean, you were a single mom raising two kids, and the challenges of working full time, and at some point you relocated from New Zealand to Australia with a young family. How did that come about, and how did you overcome a lot of those constraints when you see a lot of people struggle in their family dynamics? What gave you a beacon, or something to stay focused on?
Well, I loved being a mother. I always said I was going to have two children. Thank you. I had two children, and I had a girl and a boy. So it was a friend from school said, yes, you'd have the pigeon pair, as if I did everything perfectly. And to me, it was like, well, I wanted a daughter and a son, so I got it. And that's the thing about putting out for what you want, you get it. So I guess I listened to my intuition, John. I really had thought that Nelson was little bit small to bring children up with in because I'd grown up there myself, and I knew that it wasn't conducive to having people that, as an adult, could have lots of opportunities. So it happened. I was actually going to come to Australia with a friend and his son, and there was no connection with us. It was just that he was going to Tasmania, and I said, well, I'll come with you and go to Australia. So I picked Queensland, and I've been very happy here.
And I guess within that nurturing, the nursing and being around people, I mean, you've always found ways to get into a profession or a service orientation. Has that always been something you knew that like giving to others was also part of your own experience for healing and being connected and
Yes, karmic wise, I do have a lot to repay, to give. And nursing, I did go back to nursing in Australia, and I was an educator again. And then I went community nursing, which I loved again. I think there's a part of my rebelliousness that I don't like being in institutions. So being out in the community was wonderful. And to start with, I was someone that relieved permanent staff when they went on holiday. And that was great because I got to know lots of different people and really got to know Brisbane extremely well. And yeah, I love giving. I love giving to others. But along the way, I had to learn to give to myself as much as I gave to others. Otherwise, I would exhaust myself.
which brings us to the mental health sort of quotient that, like I said, there is a fine line between how much you give and to others and how much you give to yourself. Now, I know at times some of your biggest challenges have been when you have overcommitted or you have given too much, and then there was times of this recovery. How has that kind of set you for the standards you live today?
Mm, I certainly am a bit of a perfectionist, and so I give my all when I decide I'm going to do something. I do give my all, and I've had to pull back on that. And there have been times of recovery where I've realised that I've overdone, and that's part of my life path. Is that particularly my adrenals have suffered through my life because I've given too much. It's been great learning because along the way I've learned so much about health and so much about what goes on everywhere. I mean, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. It needs to be all combined together.
And I know certainly mental health is on the forefront, and a lot of people are aware of that. I mean, when did you start to see, certainly growing up in New Zealand in the 50s and the 60s and 70s and potentially even the 80s, it wasn't something people spoke about or sort of brought up, but I know you've always had a keen insight into seeing where people struggled, and I guess with the numerology and the caregiving. Um, when did you really start to see that mental health was starting to become something that people needed to look at?
Probably in the 70s, in my 30s, because I struggled with my life in my early 30s. I became very aware that it was important. And of course, astrology wise, we all have a wound. And Chiron, the actual planet Chiron, was founded in 1977. And that's when a lot of the workshops started, and particularly the feminist workshops. And I was right into it. And I went to workshops left, right, and centre, which accommodated all, but particularly was looking at the emotional trauma that we all suffer, because we never get everything that we want. But in so doing, we suffer mentally as well, because we have this indoctrination of what we're supposed to be from important people like our parents. And then who am I? Who's important in here? And I remember someone saying to me when I was quite young, who's the most important person in your life, Helen? And I struggled to answer, and I certainly didn't say it was me. But I learned very quickly that, it was a real, that was such a gift to me, because it made me wake up and decide who is important to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting having your own external factors and the internal factors. And I mean, if you say purely opinion based, if you could offer any advice to people and think, where do you think some of the step off points, or where people are lacking in sometimes in their growth and awareness and spirituality? What sort of steps do you think people, especially at your age now, you can look around and see an interesting world that you've grown up in and how it's changed? What are some of the same things that you see that people are challenged with?
One of the big ones, John, is that people, when they're unhappy, they share their unhappiness. They look unhappy and they usually voice their unhappiness. But so many of them don't do anything about it. And I've challenged many people to say, why don't you do something about it? Oh, it's too late now. Or, oh, I'm not going to do anything. So for me, the first little glimmer is, are you? And it's not even, are you happy? Are you content with your life? Are you content with your day-to-day of what you're doing? And then go find someone that works for you. I'm not saying go to a professional. I certainly didn't go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, probably because I'd been in the medical profession and seen that it's not everything. It's part, but there's so many other natural things that we can look at and we can benefit from. So go search, go ask questions.
Comes back to that curiosity that we spoke about earlier, and with the ideals of the strong, happy, healthy, loved found process. Where do you feel that which one sort of stands out for you as the one that gives you a real basis on that?
Well, the strong one. That's always been if I'm strong, I can manage, and I don't like it when I'm not strong, which I'm not at the moment. So there's been a lot of internal searching going on. And the loved, because I think if you're loved, even if you're only loved by yourself, you are going to be strong and happy and healthy. And again, as I said before, happy isn't everything. We can't be happy all the time. We don't know we're happy unless we're actually sad. So it's all relative. But certainly healthy. Take care of yourself. Don't eat processed food and things that upset you. For 2 minutes in your mouth and that tastes so good. What are you doing to your body?
Amazing wisdom. And you mentioned some of these struggles, and I know late last year you did have a fall, and for all of your life you've had this exuberant energy and been able to kind of push through things. And yeah, please go through this the challenge that you faced at 81 and falling and breaking your hip, and that becomes a real kind of cliche. And I know that kind of annoyed you, that you kind of fell into that statistic, because I know you'd never want to be part of the mainstream or fall into a process that would hold you, you know, in those models. So yeah, please share a little bit about that experience for you.
Frustrating is the word that comes to mind. Frustrating from the point of view that when I first was admitted to hospital, all the surgeons told me I would bounce back because I was so fit. But I'd spent a few months not feeling that well and having a heart issue, and it really all imploded. So I was very angry. I was angry at myself, and I was angry at the whole medical profession because, again, it didn't answer all the questions I want. And I'm still searching for questions. And I'm at the moment doing a lot of healing, and I'm having a reading hopefully on Saturday to look at whether karma has actually induced some of this. Because as you said, John, I never wanted to be a statistic. I wasn't going to fall over. And it really, in a sense, was a very stupid fall, and I wasn't mindful. So one of the other big, big words for me is be mindful of what you're doing all the time, which isn't easy. So I'm doing my best and leaving the rest.
It's certainly a daily challenge, isn't it? And to wake up every day and be grateful and finish the day on a level of acceptance. And certainly you've had more experience than most. So it certainly, I appreciate your willingness to want to share and give some of your wisdom and support, because life can be that challenge. And I know you've recently sort of come out of that depression and now back looking for more answers. I mean, what has helped you through some of your dark times? I mean, what shows you or inspires you or gets you out of bed every day?
It's an interesting one. I don't like lying in bed. I never have. Whether or not my mother was someone that suffered from a lot of depression, she spent a lot of her life, her older life, lying on her bed. And I like to be up and moving. So what gets me up in the morning is I don't know what the day is going to bring. So it could bring everything I want. It could bring me the answers I want. And I'm very disciplined about looking after myself and eating well and preparing all my own food. And in a sense, I love life. I'm just struggling at the moment to adapt to really a new way of living my life. And I'm taking my time. I think one of the big things in my life that I recognized quite early on is that you can't force yourself out of depression, and you can't force anybody else out of depression. It takes its time and it takes its toll. And if it's 2 weeks or 6 months or a year, take that time, because it's worth it. Totally, totally worth it.
Appreciate the insights, and you've certainly been inspiring to a lot of people, and especially myself. It's wonderful to look up the uplinks and see somebody doing it ahead of you, so that you're not spending, like you said, you didn't have a mother that was able to offer anything more than a cautionary tale of don't do what I've done. And I think
Mm.
sometimes we struggle thinking, well, what am I supposed to do? But as you've recognized that willingness to take care of yourself. Now, I know you've spoken a little bit about alternative things, which is certainly part of my observations as well. I mean, how much do you think, looking at some of these things for people about maybe past life or maybe the spiritual aspects or the numerology? I mean, how much do you think that plays a part in people's experiences?
It's up to each individual. It works for me. I had to learn along the way because it so works for me. I was totally passionate about it, and I even wrote a little book in different colours, numerology and you, because it became my my go-to, and astrology has followed that, and there are answers in there. But if it's not for someone, I have to accept that some people just either don't want to know or there's something else for them. And again, it's listen to yourself. You've got all the answers.
Yeah, like you're saying, sometimes taking the time to not push and just accept that there's a place to sit, and some of those answers, as confronting or as challenges they may be, there is a truth in there, and I guess which whether we're willing to accept. You talk about this perfectionistic tendencies, this desire to want to have more, be more, see more. Have you learned to sort of temper part of that as you're getting older?
I've had to temper the energy because I just don't have it at the moment. And I'm thinking in the 80s, probably I really can't be like I was in my 30s. And I had exuberant energy. So again, it's knowing yourself and knowing how much you've got and what you're willing to spend your time on and how long for. I mean, I'm sleeping so much these days, but I guess I need it.
Yeah, and acceptance. So, look, if people are wanting to know more about numerology, your email address is the best way to get in contact with you, or get a booklet.
Yes, yes, yep. I'm
I'll,
I'm here.
I'll share.
Ain't going nowhere.
That's wonderful. I really appreciate the time today, Helen. It's certainly been amazing for me to sit here and ask these questions and just enjoy another level of involvement with you in life. I think it's so important that we step out of our current paradigms. I know you've had challenges in the past with technology and things, but I certainly acknowledge your courage to keep looking, to keep asking questions, and wanting to keep just being the best version of yourself. So that's certainly very appreciated.
Thank you, John. Forever, forever.
Do you have any final thoughts or words or some ideals that you'd like to share?
No, just be kind, I guess. That's the biggie. Be kind to yourself and make sure that your own bank account is full before you go running around being kind to everybody else, and find a balance. I think we all need to find a balance.
And that takes
Thank you.
takes time and energy. So again, this has been a strong, happy, healthy love podcast. I'd like to thank Helen for her sharings. I know I've been the recipient over many, many years, so I really do trust you. You take a few little real gems of wisdom away from this amazing woman. And look, thank you, Helen, for joining us. And I certainly wish you a strong, happy, healthy, loved process forward.
Thank you, John. Love you lots.
I love you.